They took our light, we're taking it back. Part 1, The Consent Trap. A map for consciousness retrieval in a hijacked world, powered by holographic bioalchemy. Welcome to part 1 of my Substack series on consciousness retrieval and revocation of consent. This post is available in 3 formats: written, audio, and video. Choose what works best for you, or take them all in. This is more than a Substack series. It's a spiritual reckoning. Over 4 posts, I'll take you through the multidimensional maze of how our consent was tricked, manipulated, or outright stolen, not only through gene-altering injections, but through spiritual loopholes, energetic inversion, and psychological warfare. We'll explore how silence was used against us, how sovereignty can be reclaimed, and how to retrieve the scattered pieces of your consciousness from the AI networks, biotech overlays, and dark magic systems feeding off of our life force. This is for the brave, for those willing to open their eyes all the way, for those who feel the call of divine remembrance rising in their bones, to reclaim what was stolen while they slept, to call back every fragment, every thread of soul that was scattered, coerced, or silenced, to rise as a sovereign spark of source, unshackled, undefiled, and whole. This is not just awakening. This is reclamation. This is the work of remembering and rising. Part 1. The Consent Trap. How they tricked us into saying yes. What if you gave consent without knowing it? Not just to gene therapies disguised as medicine, but to energetic invasion, consciousness harvesting, and the slow unraveling of your sovereignty. This series unpacks the spiritual, legal, psychological, and multidimensional layers of consent as it's been manipulated in our world today. If you've ever felt that something deeper is going on, beyond the mandates, the media, and the medicine, you're not wrong. This is for those ready to remember, reclaim, and return to wholeness. For in reason, all government without the consent of the governed is the very definition of slavery. Jonathan Swift. How they tricked us all into consenting. There is a sacred universal law, one that predates all religions, all governments, all contracts, that says no one can touch you without your consent. Not just physically, but energetically, spiritually, psychologically, and legally. The tricky part is this: consent doesn't always look like a signature or a yes. In the spiritual and energetic realms, silence can be consent. Confusion can be consent. Distraction, deception, and disinformation, when unchallenged, can also be taken as consent. And this is precisely how they did it. What consent really means. Consent isn't just about saying yes. In the higher laws of the universe, true consent requires informed, conscious agreement from a sovereign being, in full possession of their will and awareness. Anything else? Coercion, deception, enslavement. But the game they've played for centuries and perfected in recent years is to bend this law by finding ways to make it look like we gave our permission, even when we didn't. They get away with it by using legal loopholes, spiritual technicalities, energetic sleight of hand, and perhaps most insidiously, by hiding the truth in plain sight. The language of loopholes. Words carry codes, and in the law of free will, what you say, how you say it, and what you leave unsaid can all be used against you. Saying I do not consent still contains the phrase I do consent. Saying I do not agree leaves the field opened for inversion. And saying nothing at all, consent by omission. When revoking consent, we must speak clearly, not in negatives, but in affirmations. I revoke all past consent. I refuse to comply. I rescind all contracts, conscious and unconscious. I reclaim my sovereign will. This is spiritual law, and like all natural law, it cannot be broken, but it can be bypassed if you're unaware of it. On an interesting side note, in English, the word consent is the same whether used as a verb or a noun. To close all back doors, it's wise to also revoke authorization, permission, and other terms that cannot be misread as voluntary actions. I'll go deeper into this in part 4 of the series. Silence, distraction, and the consent of the unaware. Let's go back to the beginning. When the C-19 jabs were released, they told us everything. The pharmaceutical companies filed documents. The patents were available. The shedding mechanisms were described in the literature. But you had to know where to look. They put out the data and then blanketed the world with another narrative. They hid the truth behind strategic rewording with phrases like, "what we are still learning." This was copied verbatim from the CDC's website on June 13th, 2021. We are still learning how well vaccines prevent you from spreading the virus that causes COVID-19 to others, even if you do not have symptoms. You can read more about this in my very first Substack post titled Request for Exemption from the Vaccine Mandate. But they already knew. They knew these products didn't stop transmission. And the ability to stop transmission is the very definition of what makes a vaccine, instrumental in ending a pandemic. They weren't learning. They were lying. And they were rewording the lie just enough to technically count as disclosure. The real truth? These are not vaccines. They are gene therapies, experimental genetic code injections that reprogram the body to manufacture a pathogenic spike protein, a bioweapon disguised as immunity. This is an excerpt from Moderna's SEC filing dated December 31st, 2020. For example, the FDA has established the Office of Tissues and Advanced Therapies within CBER to consolidate the review of gene therapy and related products, and convenes the Cellular Tissue and Gene Therapies Advisory Committee to advise CBER on its review. In the European Union, mRNA has been characterized as a gene therapy medicinal product, which falls within a broader category known as Advanced Therapy Medicinal Products, or ATMPs, which are subject to additional regulatory requirements. And shedding is a known risk of gene therapy, so much so that as per FDA guidance, collection of shedding data is required for all gene therapies. You can find the links to all of these sources in the written version of this post. So, even if you did not consent to the jabs, what happens when you stand next to someone who was injected? When you hug them, kiss them, sleep next to them, even breathe in the aerosols they shed? If you weren't warned, did you consent? That's the trick. Because from their perspective, you did. The data was available. You didn't object. You didn't protect yourself. You didn't say no. And so your silence became consent. But this didn't begin with the rollout of the so-called vaccines. Every time you pop a pill without reading the full prescribing information or ignore the long list of side effects, you're silently consenting to the possibility of harm. And it doesn't stop there. Consent can also be given on your behalf by someone else. When your mom gave you a Tylenol to bring down a fever, she unknowingly consented to the risk of liver toxicity on your behalf. When your parents registered your birth certificate and social security number, they unknowingly signed you into a system governed by maritime law and into a jurisdiction that doesn't recognize your sovereign spirit, only your corporate identity. And what most people don't know is that some of these systems are part of intergovernmental agreements. Yes, even contracts with off-world entities, permitting human experimentation without quote-unquote consent, as long as it's buried in legal fine print and disclosure. Consent doesn't always look like saying yes. Sometimes it looks like not asking questions. Sometimes it looks like trusting authority. Sometimes it looks like trying to be a good daughter, son, or citizen. But just because it was done without malice doesn't mean it was done without consequence. And just because you didn't know it counted as consent doesn't mean it didn't. This is how dark magic works. It twists your silence or your blissful ignorance into a signature. And if you don't know the rules of spiritual law, you're playing a game you've already lost. But this isn't just any game. It's a game of illusion, one rigged from the start. A game where the board is invisible, the rules are kept secret, and the other players pretend they're on your side. They dress the contracts in kindness, mask the traps in safety, and feed you pieces of poisoned candy while calling it care. And still, you play, because no one told you that you could walk away, that you could flip the board, burn the contracts, revoke the rules, reclaim your name. But now you know. And knowing, that's how you start to win. The dark magic of Big Pharma. The difference between high magic and dark magic is simple. High magic, done with your consent to help you. Dark magic, done without your consent or against your will, to harm you. From this lens, Big Pharma has always operated in the shadows of dark magic. They harm, they deceive, they profit off our trust and off our silence. Even the package inserts for the incorrectly called vaccines were literal blank sheets of paper during the first 7 months of the rollout, stamped with the phrase, "This page was intentionally left blank." And yet, that blank page was disclosure. Because we didn't ask. Because we didn't protest. Because we assumed someone else had read it. Because we wanted to do the right thing for the greater good. Because we wanted to go to the concert. Because we were tired. Because we trusted. And in the end, they used our own silence or blissful ignorance against us. Informed versus manipulated consent. Informed consent means full disclosure, in plain language, with time to reflect, and without pressure. What we got instead was coerced consent, manipulated messaging, censorship of truth, and propaganda disguised as science. They told the truth, but hid it behind firewalls, white papers, and misinformation bans. Then they watched as we scrolled, numbed out, shut down, and eventually said yes, or said nothing, which again they counted as yes. The wisdom of el que calla otorga. In Spanish, there's a saying, el que calla otorga. He who stays silent consents. And this is the hardest truth to hold. Even if you didn't get the jab, even if you resisted every mandate, even if you tried your best to stay clean and sovereign, there may have been moments when your silence spoke louder than you meant it to. But now you know, and with knowing comes power. Why this matters now. This isn't about blame or shame. This is about reclaiming what was tricked out of you. Your will, your voice, your boundaries, your soul's authority. They use legal and spiritual loopholes to take what was never theirs. But those loopholes close the moment you say, never again. I see it now. I revoke every agreement I never meant to make. I reclaim my sovereign field. And when that is done from a place of wholeness, after you've retrieved all the parts of you that may have been lost, tricked, or fragmented, your revocation becomes absolute. That's why consciousness retrieval must come first, before the revocation, before the decree, because only your whole self can give true consent, and only your whole self can revoke it. If this hit you like a gut punch, good. That means you're waking up, and that's the first step. But don't stop here. Share this post, especially with those who still sense something is wrong but haven't found the words for it yet. Subscribe to get notified when the next parts drop, and stay connected in case I get censored. If this work resonates, please consider becoming a paid subscriber. Your support helps me keep uncovering what they've tried so hard to hide. Up next, part 2, what's really going on beyond the 3D. In the next post, we'll zoom out to see the full multi-dimensional landscape, from gene modification and nanotech to AI training and spiritual disconnection. What's really going on behind the veil? What are the cylinders? How do they siphon human consciousness without us knowing? And why does all of this matter if we want to become whole again? Post 2 will take you deeper into the terrain of biotech, soul tech, and the energetic anatomy of spiritual war.